Hello and welcome to Convict Inc. I'm your host, Robert Rosso. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so. Today I'm going to be talking about a couple that were bank robbers. The couples would go by, there's a movie about them that came out, or a documentary came out about them called Carol and Johnny. This came out in 2022, and in full disclosure, I have not seen the movie. I was trying to see the movie for the last hour, and I don't know where to go see it at. Again, this is based on my computer, not being computer literate enough to navigate around the internet, but I did do a bunch of Wikipedia searches on the subjects I'm going to be talking about, and moreover, the guy was a cellie once upon a time of mine, a roommate, whatever. The people I'm referring to are John and Carol Williams. I have a Wikipedia page in front of me I want to go over real quick, and this is talking about Johnny Madison, the Shootist Williams Jr., born January 1951, is one of the most successful bank robbers in American history. After his arrest on July 9, 1994, Williams confessed to 56 bank robberies across the state of California, Texas, and Washington over an 8-year time period. By the time of his apprehension, the Federal Bureaus of Investigation were not even aware of 8 of his robberies. The FBI, in the course of tracking Williams, had nicknamed him the Shootist after the film by the same name starring John Wayne because of his habit of firing shots into the air at the beginning of each robbery. Performance art was a large part of Williams' method. His method of firing into the air caused people to avoid eye contact, so authorities had a hard time getting a description of Williams' appearance. The gunshots, in addition to cursing and yelling, provoked a sense of terror, ensuring the teller and customers' compliance. Williams put a great amount of forethought in each robbery. Sometimes he would target the place for weeks. A San Jose Police Department detective said, by far the most calculating and surgical bank robbery in the past second half of the 20th century. It's unusual for bank robbers to be well thought out, as they usually are crimes of opportunity. John Williams, with Carol, his wife, driving, made right under $900,000 in an 8-year period. They also lived a pretty domesticated life where they were on a bowling team. John was a gambler. He went to Vegas quite a bit. They lived in, I think it was Los Osos up in California, also Morro Bay. I know John had lived in Morro Bay because we had talked a lot about it. Now, I also lived up in Morro Bay once upon a time in a little town called Cayucas. Awesome town, by the way. And I just saw something today about Cayucas, and it has grown, and it's beautiful as ever. Anyway, so I met John Williams in the winter of 2013. It would be in FCI Terre Haute. A strange guy for sure, tall, skinny, kind of a pitted face from bad acme once upon a time, and I don't mean nothing bad by that, just kind of giving the description. A strange looking guy. I for sure thought he was a pedophile when I first met him. Again, that's not to demean the person. There is a certain appearance with a lot of sex offenders or pedophiles that I had become aware of, and he fit the description. And I knew that he was at once upon a time at USP Tucson, which if you were there after a certain time, it was a sex offender yard, and I knew he was there for a number of years because he had told me. Now, I got to know John better around 2014. I was the law library clerk at FCI Terre Haute, and John was in the library quite a bit doing research on his case. A year or so later, another guy who was a brilliant law library clerk by the name of Lou Early ended up at that prison, and I was burned out on the job at the time, or doing probably maybe what I shouldn't have been doing. Anyway, I was full-time and I wanted to be part-time, and I then had the staff hire Lou, who became full-time, and I eventually quit. Lou Early and John became super close, Williams, because John had Lou work on his case. There was a time in 2017 when John Williams, because of a technicality on his case or a loophole in the law or what have you, actually it was a constitutional error created by the government, John should have got out of prison 100%. Again, he had a 92-year prison sentence. His wife, Carol, was sentenced to 20 years. He pled guilty on all 58 bank robberies. He took the rap to avoid the government spending money and to let get his wife the lowest amount of time. They considered him a gentleman bank robber, or a gentleman defendant, a real polite guy. And there was again, so my point was, John had an issue that I don't want to get into the details, but John had an issue where he should have gotten out of prison, but there was time limit. The argument I believe the government won on ultimately was he was barred because of time limits. But in 2021, after the COVID pandemic hit in federal prison, John, in his 70s at the time, not the healthiest person in the world, was granted compassionate release. And I'm going to say that the same judge he asked for compassionate release was also the judge that denied his motion that I believe he should have got out on. And the judge might have looked back and saw that he was actually a model inmate while in prison. He should have gotten out of prison based on the technicality, loophole, the constitutional error, whatever you want to say. And because the judge's hands were tied on that, maybe the judge gave him compassionate release. I am not sure. In 2016 or 17, John and I became roomies with 2 other people. So there was a 4-man cubicle. I hated it. I hate anything but a cell when I was in prison because of lack of privacy. We lived in a place called G Block in FCI Terre Haute, and I was recruited up there against my will, meaning one day I was told to move. I had no choice. I was pissed, but I was in the cell with John, Lou Early, until we found out he was a cop, whatever, former law enforcement, and a guy named Tommy Rutledge. Look, it wasn't so bad living in the cubicle, but G Block was for 40 years and over. Everybody had clear conduct. It was a pretty respectful block, but I liked cell living, and I ended up moving back. Anyway, a lot of conversation with John Williams, and super, super strange guy. I was just looking at the time. I'm sorry. I thought it was off. One of the weirdest things, the earliest things I can remember John was talking about his grandmother. He had a weird relationship with his grandmother. Apparently his grandmother slept naked or something in the bed, and he talked about his grandmother's hairy vagina. I don't know how else to put it. Very strange, quirky guy for sure. He was really detailed in his crimes, as I read to you. I mean, he kept meticulous notes of all his crimes. That's all been documented. One of the things that happened with John Williams is in prison, when he became Lou Early's cellie, Lou Early was a very dominant figure. Big guy, Chicago, loud, from Chicago, real loud. Again, he was ex-law enforcement he was a cop or a bailiff who robbed a bank with his son, a couple $250,000 or so, but just a real loud guy. And I watched John Williams turn into less than a man. Lou really had a way of neutering people, cutting their balls off if he'd let them. And John really became, for lack of a better word, Lou Early's bitch. People saw it. Lou slapped him. John was stuck because Lou was working on his case, and it was a pretty sad thing to watch. Lou had John as basically an assistant, but it was assistant for Lou. Did a lot of legal work. I mean, he churned out legal stuff. You can call him a jailhouse lawyer, you can call him a hustler, but Lou Early was phenomenal at what he did. I have to give him that credit. He was just an asshole if you let him. And in fact, Lou had been punched in the mouth several times by different inmates for talking bad to them. But John Williams, a very passive guy, let Lou trample all over him. And as a matter of fact, one of the reasons, besides me liking to live in a cell, one of the reasons I had to leave is because I could not tolerate watching Lou Early just abuse, belittle, demean John Williams on a daily basis. So I felt sorry for John, for sure. I also remember his wife had gotten out of prison. He was ecstatic. At the same time, the wife's family, this is Carol, wanted her to have nothing to do with John. This really upset him. And in fact, he did make a serious suicide attempt. I'm not saying it was over that issue, but John Williams saved up his medication. He was on psych medication. And he made a real effort to kill himself. It was close. He almost got his wish. Staff saved him, and that also then caused him a lot of problems in prison, meaning once you have that jacket, then staff are really on. You have to go to mental health counseling and all this other stuff, which he did not want to do. John got caught. I don't know if I brought this up. John got caught because he had a plan to kidnap somebody, and a guy named Bob, who was a friend of his down in, I think, the Anaheim area of California, ultimately turned him in over a $35,000 reward that the FBI had for him. The movie is Carol and John. It's a documentary about the two. It's out there. I don't know how to find it to watch it, or I would have watched it before I did this. But John Williams is free today. I don't know what he's doing. In the one of the excerpts of the movie that I saw, it said that he was hoping to get back together with Carol. I saw Carol speaking, and it didn't appear that she wanted much to do with John. In fact, she's giving relationship advice to people. That's one of her jobs, about manipulation. For sure, I am sure that based on what I know about John and what I've read and what I've heard, the very few words I've heard his wife or ex-wife say, is very controlling guy, made her wear certain, he picked out her outfits, I guess, so she was basically his hostage, it appears. John talked about the robbing the banks as a thrill, and I can see that. I've always made the comment that if I was ever going to be anything other than a drug criminal back in the days, I would rob a bank for the excitement. But I'm glad I left all that criminal stuff behind, but that's what I used to say in my 20s for sure. So I can see how there would be some excitement at that, but the wife apparently got sick every time. Nothing but fear, and I guess John had threatened to kill her and her family if she left her or something. I didn't know none of that stuff. John Williams, like I said, we had a lot of conversations. He had photos of his life in Morro Bay. The person that he rented a house from, it was a beautiful big house perched up on the mountains of Morro Bay, overlooking the whole down in the city and the harbor. Just beautiful. Beautiful house. It was owned by a prison warden, and John was a tenant of a prison warden. John and Carol were, and he would blend in with society for sure, perfectly. He has that, like I said, he has that commoner look. He had the big glasses when I met him, big glasses that are thick. We used to call them Chomo 1000s or Chomo, that's child molester glasses. For whatever reason, they make people look like child molesters. So I based my first opinion, as I said earlier, based it kind of on the fact that I was around sex offenders once upon a time at Butner. I saw a lot of them in that complex. And then John was at USP Tucson, which was a sex offender camp, prison, and he wore those glasses. But nevertheless, he did look like a very common, you would never, ever, ever expect this guy to have been a bank robber a weirdo of some sort for sure. I don't say that if he ever listens to that to demean him, but really nice guy to meet. To me, a total gentleman. Like I said, I tried to do everything I could when John was getting abused by Lou Early, but there's only so much you can do, and before you got to step in and actually do something to somebody, and that's the truth. And yes, it was that bad. Verbal abuse, physical abuse. John Williams took all that from Lou Early in prison because he wanted Lou to keep working on his legal case. All right, so that's all I have to say. Again, if you really want to know more about this couple or about John, I suggest you go watch the movie Carol and Johnny. I'm going to try to find it, I'm going to try to get help finding it later. Take care.